Hi there, it's Library Lady welcoming you to the 1999 Young Reader's Choice Award Book Preview. Coming up, I'll tell you about the 1999 nominated titles, but first, the winner of the 1998 4th through 8th grade Young Reader's Choice Award. Welcome back to Wayside School. It's been closed for 242 days, but now it's school business as usual. Or is it? Mrs. Jules, the best teacher, is having a baby, and that means substitute teachers. First, there's Mr. Gorf. Why does he have 3 nostrils? And then there's Mrs. Drazil, who never forgets. And finally, the fearsome Miss Nogard, the one who could actually listen to their brains. I know it's hard to believe, but Wayside School does get a little stranger. The author of Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger is Louis Sachar. When he was going to school, his teachers always said his name wrong. Now that he's become a popular author of children's books, teachers everywhere say his name wrong. Sachar, pronounced Sacker like someone who stuffs potatoes in sacks, writes funny books. He won the 1990 Young Reader's Choice Award for his book, There's a Boy in the Girls' Bathroom. When he was in college, he had a job as a teacher's aide, and kids called him Louis the Yard Teacher. This eventually inspired Sachar to write a series about wild, weird, and wacky Wayside School. And kids in the Pacific Northwest love it. That's why Louis Sachar's Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger won the 1998 4th through 8th grade Young Reader's Choice Award. The Young Reader's Choice Award is the oldest Children's Choice Award in the United States, and it is the only regional award chosen by children of 2 countries. Each year, students in grades 4th through 8th in Alaska, British Columbia, and Alberta, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana read and vote for their favorite book. Who will win in 1999? It's up to you. All 4th through 8th graders who have read or listened to at least 2 of the nominated titles can vote in March. To help you decide which of the 13 books you want to read, here's a brief description of each author and book. Book number 1. Nina Bodden wrote her first novel at the age of 8. She's been writing for adults and children for some time. Born and raised in England, Bodden writes about kids who are frequently treated unfairly, but manage to survive with their spirits and imaginations intact. It's quite possible she knew someone like Granny the Pag. When she was younger, Catriona nicknamed her granny the Pag. It was a misspelling of pig. Granny is everything mortifying to her granddaughter. She rides a motorcycle, wears leather, doctors strange patients, and smokes. All the same, when Kat's parents try to separate her from the Pag, Kat is determined to fight. She believes that children have a right to be listened to when they say where they want to live and with whom. At 12 years old, Catriona Brooke is a force to be listened to. Book number 2. Andrew Clements used to be a teacher before he started working in the book publishing business. The idea for his book, Frindle, came from a talk he gave to a room of 2nd graders. He tells kids that the dictionary is a work in progress, and he says the best stories are honest. See what you think when you read his book, Frindle. Always the class clown, 5th grader Nick decides to invent a new word to perplex his dictionary-loving teacher, Mrs. Granger. From now on, a pen is no longer a pen, it's a Frindle. It doesn't take long for everyone to become excited about Frindle, and in spite of the school principal's attempt to put a stop to it all Nick can do is sit back and watch Frindle take on a life of its own. Book number 3. Karen Cushman believes in writing from the heart. She teaches museum studies and has access to many historical references. The idea for Lucy Whipple came when Cushman was looking at a book about the gold rush days and wondered what happened to the women and children who accompanied the gold-seeking men on their trips west. Maybe they didn't want to go. The Ballad of Lucy Whipple. Lucy Whipple doesn't want to be in Lucky Diggins, California. Her adventurous mama has dragged the family here all the way from New England, and it's nothing but a cluster of tattered tents by the side of a river. You said we'd find our fortunes, but I don't see any gold, Lucy tells Mama. Only rocks and holes and lizards. There's no school, no lending library, no one to talk to but rough and boisterous miners. Everything Lucy cares about has been left behind, and she plans to be miserable until she can go back to Massachusetts. Book number 4. Previously a school librarian, Cynthia DeFelice is now a professional storyteller and writer. The books she liked best as a kid were the stories that made her feel as if she were part of what was happening. She likes to write about characters kids will remember, and she likes to provide entertainment. She says, "I want to keep my readers turning those pages." That will certainly happen when readers pick up The Apprenticeship of Lucas Whittaker. The year is 1849, and every member of 12-year-old Lucas Whittaker's family dies of tuberculosis, a terrible disease that has swept through the community. Grief-stricken and filled with guilt, Lucas wonders if he could have saved his family by using a strange cure that involves digging up the grave of the first victim. Lucas finds work as an apprentice to the kindly Doc Beecher, and it is from him that Lucas learns about fear, desperation, and the difference between scientific reasoning and superstition. Book number 5. She used to be a children's librarian, and now Mary Downing Hahn is a full-time writer. She likes to write about real people who have both good and bad qualities. Hahn says, "Ever since I was a kid, I've loved westerns and trains, steam locomotives and mining towns. That inspired me to try combining my two loves. The result? The Gentleman Outlaw and Me, Eli, a story of the Old West." 12-year-old Eliza disguises herself as a boy and calls herself Eli in order to escape her abusive and cheating aunt and uncle. Headed west to find her father, she meets up with a charming young con man named Calvin Featherbone. He calls himself the Gentleman Outlaw. For a girl who has never tasted freedom, living a boy's life is exciting and filled with crazy adventures. Who could imagine the shocking surprise that awaits Eli and Calvin at the end of their journey? Book number 6. Karen Hess grew up in Baltimore, surrounded by people, but often feeling isolated. An avid reader, she wished she could have read more books about real issues. If she could have read about children surviving ordeals and obstacles, Hess might not have felt so lonely. She started out writing a book about speech development, and it turned into The Music of Dolphins. Lost at sea in a plane crash at age 4 and raised by dolphins, Milla is rescued years later by well-meaning scientists. She becomes the center of a government research project on language acquisition and development. The scientists teach Milla language and music, but she also learns about rules, locked doors, broken promises, disappointment, and betrayal. The more Milla finds out what it means to be human, the more deeply she longs for her dolphin family. Book number 7. E.L. Konigsberg also read a lot as a child, and she too felt the books she read told her nothing about the world in which she was living. Konigsberg began writing when her youngest child entered kindergarten. Retaining the ability to see herself as the center of the universe, Konigsberg writes eloquently for children who ask questions and seek answers. Take a look at The View from Saturday. It was a surprise to a lot of people when Mrs. Olinsky's team won the 6th grade academic bowl contest. It was an even bigger surprise when they beat the 7th grade and the 8th grade too. And when they went on to even greater victories, everyone began to ask, how did it happen? This is a story about a team, a class, a school, and 4 unique kids who together are spectacular. Book number 8. Gordon Korman wrote his first published book when he was 12 years old. It started out as a 7th grade English assignment, and he kind of got carried away. He says his books are the kinds of stories he couldn't find to read when he was a kid. He also says, "I keep my stories enjoyable for my readers by keeping them enjoyable for me." His confession, "I know it's impolite to laugh at my own jokes, but I really crack myself up when I'm writing." You'll laugh, too, when you read "The Chicken Doesn't Skate." When a baby chick named Henrietta becomes the subject of Milo Neal's science fair project, the lives of 4 students at South Middle School change dramatically. More than just a science experiment, Henrietta is a class pet, a shot at Hollywood fame, and maybe the only way the South Middle School hockey team can have a winning season. Book number 9. Katherine Paterson likes to write what she loves to read, fiction. Does she like being a writer? She loves it. She says she tells her husband that it's the only job she could do now. She says, "I work at home in my own study wearing whatever I please. I never have to call in sick. From time to time I get to go to schools and other places where I meet delightful people who love books as much as I do." Sometimes a character takes over Paterson's imagination, and she spends years getting to know that character and writing the story. Perhaps that's what happened with her character, Jip. His story. Jip, short for Gypsy, tumbled off a careening wagon at age 2 or 3 and ended up living at the poor farm. He was expected to do most of the work and had little opportunity either to go to school or learn anything about his mysterious past. One day, a caged and lunatic man named Putt is deposited at the farm, and Jip forms a close friendship with Putt during his lucid periods. When Jip finally learns the amazing truth of his parents, he also finds out that escape from the farm is his only chance for survival. Book number 10. Gary Paulsen has written over 100 books, and many of them great adventures. One of his most popular was a book called Hatchet, about Brian, a boy who survives in the Canadian Rockies after a plane crash and is later rescued. Readers pleaded with Paulsen to write a book with a different ending, one where Brian isn't rescued. Agreeably, Paulsen complied, and the result is Brian's Winter. As winter descends in the northern Canadian wilderness, 13-year-old Brian Robeson realizes he must prepare himself to face an enemy even deadlier than a moose or bears, the winter. In order to survive, Brian must construct a good shelter, make clothes, and store food. But what about loneliness? Will this winter be Brian's last winter? Book number 11. Canadian author Kit Pearson has been a children's librarian and a teacher. She generally writes about realistic problems, such as kids separated from their families and children who survive difficult situations. That is certainly the case with her character Theo in the book Awake and Dreaming. 10-year-old Theo and her young, irresponsible mother live a miserable, poverty-stricken life. It's not surprising that what Theo wants most is a real family with 2 parents and brothers and sisters. Her dream seems to come true when she's mysteriously adopted by a large, warm family, the Caldors. For the first time in her life, Theo has brand new clothes, security, and friends. But as time passes, the magic of Theo's new life begins, literally, to fade, and soon she finds herself back to her lonely life. Was it all just a dream? And who is the shadowy figure who haunts Theo's thoughts? Here is a very different kind of ghost story. Book number 12. Jerry Spinelli won the Young Reader's Choice in 1993 for his book Maniac Magee. He's back on the ballot again with a book set in his home state of Pennsylvania. As a kid, Spinelli played 5 different sports and wanted to become a professional shortstop. Lucky for readers that he became a writer instead. Get ready for Crash. Everybody knows Crash Coogan, 7th grade football sensation. He's been mowing down everything in his path since the time he could walk. And Penn Webb, his dweeby vegetarian neighbor, is a favorite target. After all, Webb is not just a nerd, he's a cheerleader too. Crash and his best friend Mike can't think of anything more hilarious than making Webb's life miserable. But Crash starts to realize that Webb has something he may never gain, no matter how many touchdowns he scores. And when Mike takes a prank too far, Crash must decide whose team he's really on. Book number 13. Ruth White grew up in a Virginia coal mining town. She always knew she would be a writer, even before she started school, and she now uses her childhood memories in her stories. White loved playing in creeks and fondly remembers family read-alouds. Those memories found a good place in Belle Prater's Boy. About 5 a.m. on a warm Sunday morning in October 1953, Belle Prater left her bed and vanished from the face of the earth. Everyone in Coal Station, Virginia has a theory about what happened to Belle. But 12-year-old Gypsy wants the truth, and she has a chance to find out when her cousin Woodrow, Belle Prater's son, moves next door. Gypsy and Woodrow become fast friends, and when Woodrow finally reveals his mother's secret, Gypsy too learns to face a painful truth of her own. Well, those are the 13 nominated titles for the 1999 Young Reader's Choice Award. At the end of this videotape, your librarian or teacher will show you where these books are shelved in your library or classroom and answer all your questions. Enjoy the reading, and don't forget to vote. Hello there. It's the Library Lady welcoming you to the 1999 Young Reader's Choice Award book preview for the Senior Division books. Coming up, I'll tell you about the 1999 nominated titles. But first, the winner of the 1998 Senior Division Young Reader's Choice Award. One frosty evening, a girl who knows no home, no parents, and no name but Brat finds shelter and warmth in a farmer's dung heap. There, Jane, the village midwife, finds her. So it is that Brat, now called Beetle by her new mistress, begins her career as a midwife's apprentice. Karen Cushman is the author of The Midwife's Apprentice, winner of the 1998 Senior Division of the Young Reader's Choice Award. Cushman has been interested in history for many years. She teaches museum studies and uses general histories and primary sources to collect her information. Examining first-hand accounts, letters, journals, recipes, and personal papers allows Cushman a close look at the details of medieval life. Readers in the Pacific Northwest obviously appreciated this taste of the Middle Ages in Cushman's winning book, The Midwife's Apprentice. The Young Reader's Choice Award is the oldest Children's Choice Award in the United States, and it's the only regional award chosen by children of two countries. Each year, students in grades 4th through 8th and 9th through 12th in Alaska, British Columbia, and Alberta, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana read and vote for their favorite book. Which book will win in 1999? It's up to you. All 9th through 12th graders who have read or listened to at least 2 of the nominated titles can vote in March. To help you decide which of the 5 nominated books you want to read, here's a brief description of each book and author. Book number 1. Eve Bunting was raised in Northern Ireland and immigrated to the United States in 1958 with her husband and 3 small children. She writes nearly all the time and gets many of her ideas from newspaper or magazine articles. She writes books for all ages, and her book, Nasty Stinky Sneakers, won the Young Reader's Choice Award in 1997. As a child, she crossed the ocean from Ireland to New York on an ocean liner. That journey helped her understand the horror the Titanic passengers must have felt as the ship sank beneath them into the still, dark ocean. This is her story of that event called SOS Titanic. 15-year-old Brian O'Neill reluctantly sails aboard the doomed Titanic to be reunited with his parents in the United States. When the inevitable wreck occurs, Brian pushes through the passengers looking for Peggy and her brothers, the Flynn boys. They had threatened to throw him overboard when the trip began, but old hostilities have no meaning now. Peggy and her brothers came from Brian's own village in Ireland, and now they're all trapped behind gates with the other steerage passengers. Brian won't let them die, if he can get to them in time. Book number 2. A Yale graduate, David Klass, has written screenplays and young adult novels and taught English in Japan. He prefers to write about people rather than issues, but his sports novels often address complicated social themes. Complications abound in his book, Danger Zone. Jimmy Doyle is the best basketball player ever to come out of Grantham, Minnesota. He is selected to play for the American High School Dream Team in an international youth tournament in Italy. When Jimmy is offered a starting position, he doesn't realize how tough he'll have to play on and off the court. When the Dream Team arrives in Italy, some of the fans don't like Jimmy's teammates or the color of their skin. What follows is a nightmare of hate and racism when the fans try to make the Dream Team's next game their last. Book number 3. A self-described print-oholic, Philip Pullman grew up traveling a great deal between Africa, Australia, and England. He has always considered himself a storyteller, even during his teaching years. Pullman has recently begun taking drawing classes and secretly would like to draw and write a comic book. Passionate about issues like social justice, Pullman's writings often address these themes. This is evident in his compelling fantasy, The Golden Compass. Lyra is content to run wild among the scholars of Jordan College with her demon familiar always by her side. But the arrival of her fearsome uncle, Lord Asriel, draws her to the heart of a terrible struggle, one born of gobblers and stolen children, witch clans, and armored bears. And as she hurtles toward danger in the cold far north, Lyra never suspects the shocking truth. She alone is destined to win or to lose this more than mortal battle. It's the golden compass that will help Lyra steer toward truth in this remarkable fantasy. Book number 4. A Texas native, Rob Thomas, spent some time in Los Angeles working for the teen news network Channel 1. Now he writes funny and honest young adult novels that realistically depict high school life. Thomas also plays in a band and writes X-Files novels under the name of Everett Owens. In his book, Rats Saw God, Thomas says the main character, Steve York, is not like him at all. Steve is much smarter than me. He would have loathed me. I dug high school. I was a jock and involved in all sorts of clubs and activities. Meet Steve York yourself in Rats Saw God. Steve York's high school counselor offers him a chance to make up his missing English credit by writing a 100-page paper on any topic. Steve chooses to write about his life during his sophomore year, following his parents' divorce. During that time, he was at odds with his family, involved in an offbeat art club, falling in love, and ultimately betrayed. In the process of writing about his past, Steve learns that his notions about truth, friendship, fidelity, and family relationships have been dead wrong. Book number 5. Don Trimbath is a Canadian writer who lives in Edmonton, Alberta. He's worked as a columnist for several newspapers and also as a workshop facilitator for a literary association in Alberta. He used part of that experience to write his first novel about Harper, a character that Trimbath says has more of me in him than I initially intended. Meet up with Harper at the Tuesday Cafe. A juvenile justice judge orders 15-year-old Harper to write an essay titled, How to Turn My Life Around. It's punishment for setting a fire in a school garbage can. So his mother enrolls him in a weekly writing class called the Tuesday Cafe, but they discover that the participants are not traditional high school students. However, the class's ready acceptance of him and the teacher's easy manner help Harper discover a way to communicate with his neglectful parents, improve his self-esteem, and figure out, indeed, how to turn his life around. Well, those are the 5 nominated titles for the 1999 Young Reader's Choice Award Senior Division. At the end of this videotape, your librarian or teacher will show you where these books are shelved in your library or classroom and answer your questions. Enjoy the reading, and don't forget to vote.